is be true to what you said on paper.
Just Jamal. Good morning. Welcome to At the Round Table with MAMLEO. I am your host, Larry Olson. And in the studio with me is my co-host, my brother from another, Dr. Bradley, is in with us this morning. He's getting set up there. So while he's doing that, we want to thank our sponsor, Guarantee Rate Mortgage Company. For all your mortgage needs, give branch manager Cora Holbrook a call at area code 781-342-0252. Guaranteed Mortgage is located at 75 State Street in downtown Boston, Mass. Guaranteed Rate Mortgage Company, guaranteed to exceed your expectations. I want to say, chili.
Man, this is a chilly morning, man. I'm here. I'm doing the best I can.
Well, listen, at least you know black don't crack.
It doesn't crack, but it's freezing.
It is. I came outside this morning, my brother, and I looked. I got in the car. You know, you can tell when it's cold when your car is acting right. It's just saying like you probably
Right. I was like, dude, do you know what time? You know the temperature.
Right. And the thing is, I was being lazy because I have a car. I have a garage.
Wow.
Right. So I pulled up and I was like, I had to get something. I said, I'll just leave it outside. And normally I don't. And I paid the price this morning because it makes a huge difference.
Well, I had a garage. I turned it into a den. I wish I had a garage this morning, man.
Oh my,
it was brutal. My car was like, I was like, oh no, don't tell me this is going to happen. But it fired up, and it got me here. So God is good, but man, it is freezing
all the time. I know. When we came in, there was some vagrants sleeping on the couch. I think the church has opened up a sanctuary for the cold shelter. And then he turned over.
He said, "Oh, that's Pastor Walsh."
That's dedication. The pastor's here all night. Making sure the heating system is going good. So I want to thank him because without him, we wouldn't be able to be here this morning.
No, we wouldn't.
So, matter of fact, with that said, good morning, Pastor Hobbs. How are you, sir?
Good morning. I'm well by the grace of God.
He's got his mittens on over there trying to type on the with the glove.
We all here in our hats.
I know, so folks, y'all
excuse us, man,
because it's more about warmth. Than,
it is as opposed to appearance. I came in here and said, no, I got to put my hat on.
So you lose most of your heat from the top of your head, and that is so true. So, Pastor Hobbs, before we go any further, sir, if you wouldn't mind. Prayer.
Absolutely. Father God, we do bless you. We honor you. We give you praise. We're grateful for this day in the midst of the cold and all that we're dealing with. We're grateful for life. I'm grateful for the activities of our limb and to be clothed in our minds. We're grateful for just being God all by yourself. So, Father, we ask you to bless this broadcast. Bless all who tune in. Bless it to be productive, be glorified in and through all that's said and done. And we count it as done in Jesus' name.
Amen.
Amen. To that. So, a lot going on. But first, we want to say our good mornings. Oh, there he is. He's back. Y'all better lock that door.
I thought he was going to sleep.
So, want to say hearty good morning to Mr. and Mrs. Harry Scales. In fact, he had texted me last week. He says, you guys, appreciate you giving us a shout out. Absolutely. Thank God, dedicated lawyers. Good morning to Brother Jamal Crawford. And good morning to Sister Denise DePina Reed. We got to get her back in studio here.
Yes, we do.
The three amigos. It can't be two amigos.
No, it can't be two of mine. She got to come back and help us out.
Absolutely.
I talked to her a couple of weeks ago, and she said, well, you guys get up too early. I'm like, come on, Denise.
Get up too early. She's retired.
Exactly.
Get up. It's a Saturday morning. Give us brothers a couple of hours on a Saturday. Not have to do it every Saturday, but every once in a while. Yeah. And so definitely. And all to all our listening audience, like I said, folks, it is quite chilly out there this morning. So you want to
it's getting better, man. It's -9. It was -11.
Well, let's see what it's like down in
Indiana.
Here we come.
It's probably not -15 degrees.
So we want to say good morning to Brother Bridgeport. Give us the forecast for Indiana. I'm sure it's probably not much warmer. But you know what I did notice, Dr. Bradley, that I was watching the news and Texas is getting more snow this year than we.
Yeah, and ice. Tennessee,
and
ice,
right places. But these are the folks who say that there's no
global warming.
The climate, that this is not affecting weather pattern. Right?
Exactly.
Even China's trying to say the weather is affecting why that balloon is floating.
We're trying to get a feel for what the weather pattern is. That's why the balloon is.
Okay, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. That is not going to happen. We're going to get into as well. Mayor Wu had her State of the City address this week. So I want to find out from folks, what did you think about it? Was there any substance in there that you thought that the State of the City? We talked about it, and now that we've had her talk about it, and a lot of people were pointing out, rightfully so, there was no mention of the schools, conditions of the schools. And I didn't watch it, but I was told that she said she was going to talk about that in her next State of the City address.
Next year?
Next year.
Okay, so that's not important enough to kind of lay out a plan. So why not? You didn't have to plan, or that's why you didn't speak about it? That's why. I mean, what reason did she give for not? I mean, I know you don't know, but I'm saying.
Well, I think it's a fair question, and I think also if I'm a parent and I'm seeing what's taking place in the schools, particularly when it comes to the violence, I would have to be inclined to think that there's not much learning going on, right? And that I would want to know what is the plan. And I don't, with a sense of urgency, I don't think I could wait for till next year.
But Bridgeport still, 17 degrees in Gary, man.
Yeah, I know.
Woman there, that's that's a heat wave.
Yeah, we'll take that. It's really disheartening. Like I said, I did not watch it, and I've heard that from several people. And if that's the case, I think it needs to be talked about with the schools, because what's happening inside of them, I know what I'm seeing
is definitely not learning happening inside of them.
No.
But with a budget of 1.3 billion, one would think that the school system, if money is the reason, one would think the school system is doing extremely well with that kind of budget. But I guess it takes more. I know it takes more than money. So you have to have the policies and the practices in place too.
Well, absolutely. I think education. Also. Their numbers of staffing is declining. Safety is a huge concern. I know there was a really good article in the Dorchester Reporter recently, and it talked about that and highlighted the lack of safety in the Boston public schools. So there's a lot going on there that needs to be fixed. And, I don't think not discussing it is the appropriate way. You listen to At the Round Table with MAMLEO. If you want to weigh in on the conversation, the call-in number here is 617-282-0685, 617-282-0685. So we're talking about the State of the City. If you watched it, did you get any? What was your takeaways? What did you want to hear from the mayor? I did see a little clip on the news in that where she said she's going to be giving out more land to be developed in some of these neighborhoods where affordable housing is needed. But we had T. Michael Thomas from the People's Academy here a couple of weeks ago when we were in studio, and he had been given a piece of land from the city, but not the resources to build on it. So, he's in jeopardy of it going back to the city. So, again, with giving people land without the resources, even if it's free,
or even about a means to get the resources, some type of subsidy or something of that nature would be helpful.
Right, and it seems like there's no takers with the folks that have the money. A lot of these large developers, right? They don't see any profit in it. They're not in the charity business.
That's right.
That they're not looking to develop land unless there's a nice profit. I'm not talking about a small size profit. They want to be paid, and they want to be paid well. So they're not developing on this land. And they're talking about rent control. I know the mayor and the city council members, some of them want to bring back rent control. Rent is out of control. That's so when you're looking at, I'm not sure what they mean by that, because even if you took into consideration today's costs for rents in Boston, I think in certain neighborhoods, it's starting pretty much in all neighborhoods. A 1-bedroom is over $2,000 a month, right? So if
1 bedroom,
1 bedroom. Yeah, I know you haven't. Yes, the average price for a home in Boston is pushing close to $800,000. Right, that's probably somewhere in the line, honestly, of a fixer-upper. Now it's kind of leveled off because interest rates are going up. You're seeing it start to push more back to being somewhat of a buyer's market, where you're seeing a decrease in prices. Where a year ago everything was going for above asking price, but there has been some cooling off and somewhat. But still, even at those numbers, if I buy a 2-family home, and they're saying it's not going to include, I think it's up to a 3 or 4 family that won't be under the rent control. Because I mean, if that was the case, if you bought a home at $800,000, there's no way you can subsidize your tenant's rent. You got to try to get as much as you can to help pay that $5,000 plus a month mortgage.
Yeah, but when you have investors who are coming in and they're buying those 3 multi-dwelling homes, like 3 and 4 families, and then they're carving it up into condos, and they're selling them off, rent control doesn't cover anything.
Great point. Great point.
So what I'm trying to say is that rent control is not going to address the entire issue. You're still going to have a problem where Boston is extremely, expensive to live in.
You're right. I didn't think about that, Dr. Brown. You raise a very good point, because a lot of these multifamilies are not being turned into apartments.
No, they're not.
Into condominiums, and that doesn't, and people are not renting out their apartment, their condo. So.
And if I own the condo and I go and buy a house someplace else, I'm probably not going to rent it out because I'm subject to that rent control policy. Don't want to be a part of that, So I think that's just. I think the train has already left the station on that issue. I think we got to come up with something a little better than that. The rent control just not going to do it.
No, I don't think it's coming back, because the state's going to have to sign off on it. There's a lot of things, and this is where I really have to look at it and say, this is politicians talking things that they don't have to deliver on, right? Because a lot of the things that Mayor Wu ran on, they're not coming to fruition. Mass and Cass. I said to someone the other day, I drove through there, I said, did they extend the jail? I said, well, no, what do you mean? I asked one of the sheriffs, because I had a meeting and one of Sheriff Tompkins people, and I was just being facetious, because if you've gone down there, Dr. Bradley, there is more fencing on the streets. It's pushing out, creeping out. Yeah, they're taking away the sidewalks where these folks used to make the encampments, and they've now fenced it off. So the sidewalks almost look like an extension of the jail. Like you would think that's...
So I'm just processing it in my mind. So if I'm walking down the street as a regular taxpaying citizen, now I have to walk in the street and get in that area.
Pretty much, like the firehouse there. It's right there at Southampton Street. That's all fenced off.
Really?
Yes, you can't walk on the sidewalk there. That's all fenced off.
So if I'm walking because I have no other means, my car is not, whatever the case may be, and I have to walk someplace, I'm putting my body in peril because. You fenced off? You probably have a tightrope of a segment on the sidewalk, just enough for both your feet to pass through. Really?
Yeah, on both sides.
Wow.
And then all of pretty much the bulk of the people that are hanging out there are on the side street. They've kind of, so it's like we're hiding out. It's like when you have that crazy relative, and when company comes over, you take them upstairs. So it's like the folks are being hidden on the side streets, but they're making their way back out to the.
So what does a person that do today on a day like today down there?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, some of the, because you can't force people to go inside,
right?
So I know they most likely have had assistance down there trying to get people off the streets from down there, but some folks won't go, and they're more comfortable in. Because a lot of them have their possessions, everything they own is there. They don't want to leave it because.
But in minus 11 degree temperatures. Come on.
I mean they've opened up, like South Station is open, which normally it isn't for people who are down there. It's because there was some big controversy that they were not allowing people to sleep in South Station. So the T station there where the commuter rail and the Amtrak run. But they're allowing them during this cold spell to, if they need to take shelter, that they can come inside to warm up and not be evicted from the premises. But it's a problem that shouldn't just be Boston bearing it. But this is where when people run on things and make promises that really you see how difficult it is. It's one thing to campaign; it's another thing to deliver.
Another thing to deliver. It's entirely different,
and it's tough because I'm not laying blame, but that's what I'm saying is that I think when you criticize other folks and now you're in there, you realize how difficult the problem really is. It's easy because even when you've been former president of MAMLEO just as I have. And when you see things from the outside and you don't have to deal with them on a daily basis, it seems a little easier, less challenging, right?
Exactly. And also, when you're running for something, you're not actually, usually you don't lay out your plan.
Right. You point out the other opponent's deficiencies.
You point out, you know what I mean? You look at the other individual's plan and say, well, this individual has a deficiency here and there, but you don't lay your plan out and say, this is what I'm going to do and this is how it's going to work. You just hope that people believe that you can get the job done based on how well you present your argument.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's not working. It's definitely not working. 617-282-0685. 617-282-0685 is the number here. Did you see the mayor's state of the city? What do you think? What were your takeaways? And I know, folks, because we're gonna wrap it into this as well. The incident down in Memphis, Tennessee, the police beating Tyree Nichols. I know his funeral was, I believe, on Thursday of this week.
I believe so.
Yeah, Wednesday or Thursday of this week. And we just see this pattern. People say, "Oh, these were black police officers who beat this man to death." Dr. Bradley, you've been in this profession as long as I have, and we've seen people who buy into the culture, regardless of
I have family members and my children speaking on that issue, and they expressed that it was very painful to see all black police officers. And my response was, it would be very painful to see any police officer do what they did. It doesn't really matter, because we're not talking about color, we're talking about culture.
Right.
This is the policing culture, and unfortunately, some of us hate us. You know what I mean? It is what it is. You got to be honest, but we need to talk about. We need to talk about the culture, and you have to understand that policing in America stems from slave patrol. That's what it stems from. And slave patrol came about because of a rebellion. It called the Stono Rebellion, which was a rebellion of black slaves who tried to get to Florida, because Florida was where the Underground Railroad ran south.
Don't want to go there now.
No, they don't want to go there now. But the Underground Railroad ran south in the 1700s before it went north, you see. And so they were trying to get to Florida. And they actually rebelled, and they killed some folks, killed some landowners, and killed some slave masters. On the first day. The second day, they were met with a 100-man, white men military militia. And they were slaughtered. All right? But as a result of that, South Carolina passed legislation, and that legislation basically said, well, number one, you're going to treat your slaves better, and number two, every white man from the age of 12 to 65 will form this patrol, and this patrol is going to be white men on horseback, and they're going to check slaves as they move back and forth through the plantation. They better have their permit to be off plant. So that's really the foundation. Your papers. Exactly. So that's really the foundation. That was the very first police force that was funded by public funds. Period. So when you you have to understand the history before you can start addressing the problem. So if you take that and leap forward to today, all the culture, habits, practices stems from that. So you have a culture that actually targeted certain people.
Well, see, and it's interesting. You're this Black History Month, right? The shortest month of the year, right? February. I celebrate my history every day, so that's why I really don't buy into it and don't really say, "Oh, well, I've got to do all these things this month to acknowledge Black history." I acknowledge it every day, so I don't. The symbolism means nothing, because it's almost. And then at the end of the month, we stop. We have all of these things, but your point, and I think that's why down in Florida, the governor there doesn't want to talk about this country's sins, right? We don't talk about that. This woke culture, as he calls it, right, is that he doesn't want people to be awakened to this country and its history, right? It is not always, and to this day, in a lot of ways, is not kind to black people in this country, and that's just the reality. That's the history of what you're just describing. Is this country, and we're seeing it in real time now.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, so if you have you have institutions, and this is what the critical race theory This is what they have made it out to be. But really, it was, right here at Harvard, a legal concept. A legal curriculum in law school.
Yeah.
But it withered away at the idea, and now it becomes analyzing the foundation of institutions in America.
Yes.
And so the institutions were created a lot like the police department institution was, based on this concept or this issue around people being better based on the skin color.
Right.
Being worse based on their skin color. And so it's simply saying is that we have to look at what are our culture, what's our practice, what's the culture. So policing is no different.
Right.
And so it doesn't really matter if you're black, white, or polka dot. If you don't watch yourself, that's one side of my argument. If you don't watch yourself, you find yourself gravitating towards that nonsense. The other part of my argument is, or my suggestion, I shouldn't say argument, and I'm going to ask you this question, brother. You were on the job longer than I was. I was on the job for over 20 years. You're still on the job. How many times have you sat down with someone who has a level of education in stress management, coping mechanism for stress, traumatic, managing traumatic situations? How many times you sat down with someone like that to kind of talk about how you feel based on all the things that you have seen in your career? How many times you have done that other than when you came on?
It's very rare, and it's usually when I have to force the conversation to take place.
Well, I'm sorry.
No, good.
Well, brother, I tell you, in my 22 years of policing, it only happened to me one time. That when I came on the job. No one. I went to the range every quarter to improve the proficiency in my firearm. Yeah. But I never went to sit down with a counselor to say, okay, I'm seeing all these things that the normal person doesn't see, and I need to be able to deal with some things that I feel that are bothering me. So a lot of things that we see happening in policing, I think it could be avoided if we had some kind of program in place where every so often the police officers would have a sit down with someone who's skillful in actually identifying coping mechanisms to deal with stress. Stress that we see every day, that is cumulative over our career. Because it's not normal to see babies, who throats are cut or dismembered. It's not normal to see dead bodies. We hide that from people, but who hides it from us? That has an impact on our psyche, but no one actually does anything to help us deal with that issue. So I think a part of this is also officers being overly stressed based on their experience and things that they have seen on the job, and there's no outlet. That's just my opinion.
No, they're starting to.
Mental health is an issue here.
Yeah,
and we need to we need to do better in making sure our officers are mentally suitable to actually be in that patrol force wearing that firearm.
And they're starting to do that, but it's just a recent where they're looking at that aspect of how this stuff affects police officers because, coming up when I came on as well as you, it was just you need to toughen up, right?
Hey, listen, this was the mantra. If you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen.
That's right.
That tough boy thing. And so most officers wouldn't even say anything if they were dealing with issues.
That's right.
It would manifest itself in other ways like alcohol abuse, drug use, family abuse. You start seeing those things, and then you instead of actually dealing with the undercurrent problem, you want to discipline the officer and never deal with the real issue, which is a mental health issue. Right. So I could name people immediately. I won't do it here on a radio show that I looked at and said, how does this individual actually pass the psych? Why is this individual wearing a gun and carrying a gun and wearing a badge? Because this individual is actually mentally compromised and should not be a police officer at this time. Right. But if the individual wanted help, he or she was not inclined to ask for it because they would be ostracized and alienated. You see, and picked on as being too weak to be a police officer. We have to change that culture as well.
But and to your point, though, I think that culture still exists when it comes to police officers reaching out for help, even having been exposed to those type of issues, right? Because we know, like, people are still reluctant to go to seek out help from our stress unit and any type of mental health of fear that that's going to get back and that's going to...
And they're going to lose their badge.
That's right.
They're going to lose their gun, and they can't do details.
That's right.
And so what ends up happening, we end up sending ultimately a broken officer to deal with a broken situation.
Yeah.
And so two rights, two wrongs doesn't make a right. We have a problem here. And it's not... It's not abnormal because of the fact that we see things that people don't usually see.
Right.
But there's no way for us to actually go through any kind of, cathartic episode or some type of way of cleansing that, or some type of way of coming up with some type of, coping mechanism to deal with that. I did it when I didn't really know what I was doing at the time, but I got into, running. Yeah. I got into golfing, I got into just, walking the pond just to clear my head because I saw some things like I just can't understand why people would do this to each other.
Right.
But a lot of officers will actually go into drinking, child abuse, spousal abuse, drugs, or ultimately beating or killing a citizen who do not obey his or her command. And a lot of this is a manifestation of mental health issues.
But also that the suicide.
That's another big thing.
Taking their own lives.
Yes,
right? And we've seen that.
We see it. I have several of my classmates who actually gone through, who have committed suicide.
Yeah. So it's not like, I think people are immune. Not everyone is equipped to deal with these things, right? And there's not a lot of times a mechanism for you, an outlet for you to release, right? Yeah. So people end up taking their own lives. And like I said, we've seen it far too often, even here in Boston. It's not, we're not immune to it. And even to the beating, matter of fact, our current police commissioner, Michael Cox, was a victim of a brutal assault on him. And he was a police officer at the time. Exactly. It wasn't that he was, not saying it's justified, but I mean, he was not, the story could not be fabricated that in any way that he was resisting arrest or causing any mayhem. It just, he was a black man.
Yep, and the system protected the individual who actually issued the beating. So we have a long way to go. So to say that it's just, it was, go back to the issue, to the original point, black officers, I'm hurt over black officers, any officer. Any officer doing something like that is wrong. We got a cultural issue in policing. We have to deal with that cultural issue.
Right.
That's the reality. And we have to do things better. We have to, as a police administrator, we have to think about how do we protect our people from themselves. Because again, it is in that culture, police officers are not going to step forward to say, listen, I can't, I'm not sleeping well, or, I'm not holding I can't, conversate. I get angry. I have rage inside. I don't know what to do with it because it is not received well in policing.
No, and it's only getting worse because, in Congress now, the loonies have taken over the Congress in Washington, D.C., and committees have been given to crazy people. One of them, I want you to listen to this, Dr. Bradley, get your take on the other side. This crazy congresswoman from Georgia, your home state, Marjorie Taylor Greene, right? On and this is what, and all, not just crazy but incompetent, right? So this is what she had to say about critical race theory. Let's take a listen.
And line them up next to each other.
How much COVID cash went to CRT?
CRT.
Critical race theory in education. It's a racist curriculum used to teach children that somehow their white skin is not equal to black skin and other things in education.
Yeah. No, I do not know that, but I do know that there's provisions that the federal funds generally are not used, are supposed to be used for curriculum.
Oh,
that's a state.
Oh, Mr. Dodaro, I have to tell you, in Illinois, they received $5.1 billion at an elementary school there that used it for equity and diversity.
One school received $5.1 billion.
So it's being used for these things.
This is a Washington Generals, really.
Right. So,
are you serious?
Right.
One school received 5.3,
which is, it was not true. And the school received none of it. But I'm saying is that the total amount that the state, I believe, received was $5.1 billion.
Okay.
But she was equating it to that this was money that was channeled into critical race theory. But did you notice how she phrased that? It's to have white people thinking they're less than black people, right? If there's somehow you read into that, you know what she's actually talking about. That folks like us will never be equal to her. Matter of fact, I don't think I'm equal to her. I'm better than she is.
I'm going to say equal to her is nothing to be happy about.
Thank you. But
are you kidding me?
This was the deal that Kevin McCarthy had to strike. Not being elected to speaker after 15 times, right? He basically is given the inmates are running the asylum. And people like this, and this is what they have holding hearings on, and this is what you're going to see for the next 2 years.
So in other words, nothing will get done in Washington.
Not that much got done before.
You're going to have this gotcha Congress. Basically pass
that's all it is. And the other one is there was another one there where she was talking about that we have too few guns now that they can now.
Oh, that's the woman from Colorado.
Yes, yeah, right. Did you hear that one?
Yeah, I heard that.
That we only have 46% of the guns in our population in the world is less than half of that, and she's saying we're falling behind. We got to pick it up.
In fact, and I also noticed that the Republicans are wearing like a pen, that AR-15 pen.
Right.
What's wrong with these people?
Well, this is what is representing our government, right? And thank goodness that the Senate is controlled by the Democrats now. We have a Democrat, so none of this foolishness that they're passing will get passed into law because the president will not sign it. It won't even get a hearing in the Senate, thank goodness. But this is the Looney Tune. This is what the Republicans and to get behind Donald Trump again. And the irony is that all these things, like they removed Congresswoman Elon from her committee because they're saying that she's anti-American, and yet Marjorie Taylor Greene said that 9/11 didn't happen. 9/11 didn't happen, and that the all this didn't. And then you have the new congressman from New York, George Santos, lied about everything. And yet they get to serve on committees and chair committees.
Well, see, it's interesting, and I'm going back into history because I think history tells us where we are today. And I'm not going to give you a history story here, a history class here. I'm not going to lecture on history, but I will say that when you read the conversation and look at the events that were happening around among the founders, as it relates to the Second Amendment, you would begin to realize that the Second Amendment was put in place to encourage white people to have firearms to keep their slaves in order. That was really the purpose of it. And so when I see the Republicans wearing this AR-15, I'm asking myself, do you understand what the Second Amendment is about? Yeah, it says certain things, but the real conversation was about, again, there's a large amount of slaves in America. So much so they're outgrowing. There is more in population than free white folks. We got to keep these individuals enslaved and under control. Some people are arguing, well, we have the militia. Well, the militia was very good for stopping rebellion, but it wasn't very good for protecting the colonies against invaders like England. Okay, so they were good at stopping the rebellions, though, but they also encouraged the average white man to have a firearm. You must have, and that's what it was all about. That was the conversation that was happening. Now it's worded differently, but the conversations and that's how I think. What brought this is what issue was happening at the time that made people to think that we need to have the Second Amendment. Well, the Second Amendment was all about maintaining slaves, and holding slaves accountable, keeping slaves under control. So when I see that folks are pushing for more guns, I'm like, do you understand the issue that was happening that brought about the Second Amendment? It was about keeping people that look like us. We couldn't have the firearm, but it was okay for white men to have it. That was a part of the legislation.
617-282-0685, 617-282-0685. You're listening to At the Round Table with MAMLEO. Now, when you said the average white man, I'm thinking, oh, maybe is that where the group formed from? The average white man?
Average white man.
Oh, all right, that's where, okay, now.
Yeah, but really, and that's the beauty of it, and I do not have my degree in history, but I do a lot of reading, and I do a lot of research, and as I come across these things, I'm saying, oh my God, so this is what it is. This is what happened.
Well, but to that historical piece, Dr. Bradley, autocrats, and we're seeing it in real time in Russia, right, in other, autocratic countries, right, North Korea, China, right, that people feel like, you see that like down in Florida with their governor, right, banning certain books, right. That's what Hitler started. That's how Hitler started out, right. Banning books, what you can, what you can and cannot read. So I told folks, there's a slippery slope, because one thing about autocrats, they do not accept dissent from anyone, right. And if you look at that even right now with their leader of the autocrat, Donald Trump, right. So anyone who dare run against him. So now that some of these folks that were part of his team, Nikki Haley and others, right, are expected to announce they're running for president. You see, he attacks them because what autocrats do is they'll tell you that it's these people who I'm coming after, and only those folks.
Take it too close.
I'm coming for you because right now I'll accept your dissent so I can help. You can help me to try to quell these people. But after a while, I'm not even going to listen to you, because even like in Russia with Putin, you get arrested for not calling a war. Like, you get thrown into jail so if you don't call it what he wants it to be, a special operations, and when you know what it is. But something as simple as that, just having your opinion about what's going on, and that when Donald Trump said he wanted to suspend the Constitution, these are the same crazies who are in favor of that and saying the things that happened, that who are you going to believe, me or your lying eyes? And now these folks are running government when they shouldn't even be running a general store.
But if you look at it's the 14th Amendment that basically says that anyone incites an insurrection against the government shall not hold office. I forget what clause it is, but it is in the 14th Amendment. And so Donald Trump, based on what you have seen, the evidence is very clear, that he should not be running for presidency again, any office, and anyone who participated, all those senators, they should not be allowed to run. I mean, our government is now in a state of paralysis. They're like, okay, we know it's here,
but laughing stock.
So who actually execute this thing? I mean, it's there. It's been there for hundreds of years, but who executed? I mean, we don't know what to. Does that fall on the executive branch, or does it fall on the judicial branch? We don't know, and so they're using that as a way of not carrying it through. But that guy should never be allowed to run for office again, in my opinion.
But they wanted to impeach President Obama for wearing a tan suit.
By the way, Reagan won one as well.
But to my point, and so I think that's what got these folks all riled up, that a black man dare occupy that office, right? And now you have a criminal who every time you turn around, there's some other criminal enterprise that he's been doing that's being uncovered, right? That's the mob calling up the Secretary of State down in Georgia. I only need 11,780 votes, right? That's how they should do in Chicago, right? Keep counting till the numbers add up, right? And yet there's still because it's not just because I look past those individuals, because there's a constituency that supports this, and that's the scarier part, is that there are folks who are in line with these folks. Millions, tens of millions of people. Their lies
to strength, right?
That's right.
Because if they are consistently losing votes, losing office, losing power, they will shift their strategy.
Right.
All right. But right now, although it's a slim majority.
There you go.
But it's the majority nevertheless.
There you
know
go.
what I mean? So it's slim.
Right.
So They're saying that there are people out there who are voting for us, who appreciate what we're doing, appreciate the nonsense, encouraging it to happen. And so the question becomes, why are they voting for them? What is motivating someone to vote for stupidity?
Right.
And there's got to be something there that they're more concerned about than the stupidity that's before their eyes.
Right. And that's more of an indoctrination than any books on black history. You're banning books for Maya Angelou and other black authors, right? Because, and now Ron DeSantis down in Florida, because he's afraid of a transgender. Now he wants young girls. I don't know if you heard his latest antics. No, he wants young girls to fill out the paperwork of when they have their menstrual cycle, right? Because he knows that, right? So, look at your face. Yes, exactly,
Really?
Exactly. For you to be able to participate in sports, and if you don't have one, then that means you're a male, transgender.
Well, so why is he doing this? And see, he's doing this. This is my theory. He's doing this because he's positioning himself to run for national office and get the support of all the loonies, all the 7 million people, 70 million people that voted for Trump. Right. He's trying to. That's his bait. He's trying to get his. He's saying if I can just get those people, and I can do all these things and tell them how crazy I am, I can get into the office. That's right. So he's doing these things.
The crazy.
Exactly. I'm out crazy the crazy.
Yes.
I'm out Trump.
Exactly. And but the thing about what they see, they created the monster, right? And Donald Trump will burn the house down
before burn it down
before he allows.
Because people like you, people like you and me, who are independents, are going to look at that and say, I'm gonna go with the D. Right. I tell you what I did.
Right.
I mean, everybody who had a D, I go okay.
Right.
Unless I recognize a name that I thought was like no, then I wouldn't vote for anyone. Or I'll write something in. But most people who are independent, who are gonna look at this and say, listen, you know what? I'm not voting for that.
Right.
And so they may be able to win their primary,
right? But
when it comes to a general election, they're going to lose it.
But to your point, they saw that in the last few election cycles, right? Yeah. Where the vast majority of those non-believers and all of that, even on wherever you stand on abortion rights, right? Yep. That 78% of the country, even a lot of Republicans, said they don't want the government. It's like it's the hypocritical. You're saying that you don't want the government telling you whether you can have a gun or you can have a firearm, a weapon. Mm-hmm. But yet we're going to tell women what to do with their bodies, the government, right? Yep. Now, I choose life. That's me. Mm-hmm. But I'm not going to sit there and be the morality of the country, right? Yeah. And tell people what to do between them and their doctors. And even that, they're still trying to pass legislation banning these things when the country has said that's none of your business.
But Larry, look at it this way though.
Help me out here, bro.
That's a mindset. But if you are of the mindset that this is my house, and I run the show here, so if you're gonna come here, you're gonna take your shoes off, Doc. Like I told you, take your shoes off. You're gonna put your coat up, like I told you, put your coat up. And if you don't like it, you can leave. Right. That's the mindset that these people have about America. But to your point, this is my country.
Exactly. But I like your analogy there. But when I go to your house, if shoes are worn in your house, I can't tell you to take off your shoes.
That's the other side of the argument. That's the other side of the analogy. Right? But you're absolutely right. But the issue here, what we have in here, what I see is that people who are in government, who do not look like us, so like this country was created for me and me alone. Never mind the people who were here when we got here, because it was a new world. We discover it. We're going to civilize them. We're going to indoctrinate them into Christianity, whatever we want to indoctrinate them into. But now it's my place, and so in my place, this is what you're going to do. You know what I mean? So you're going. If I tell you to have a child, you're going to have a child. And if you don't want to have a child, I'm going to put it in the law. Who, by the way, that it rules, except if you're Donald Trump, it doesn't rule you. Right. But other than that, I'm going to force you to have this baby. And why am I forcing you to have the baby? Because I'm not very comfortable with the population level
the way it's going.
Where it's going. America is becoming too blacker and browner and redder. And every year. So we got to do something about that.
And your point is well taken, because we have a border to the north of us in Canada, right?
That's where I'm going. Not a point. I was going to go just there. Yeah. I mean, you can see that manifesting itself as you go when you look at the contrasted relationship or the reaction at each the northern and the southern border. You don't see what you see in the southern border at the north side of it. You know what I mean? You welcome in. Why? Because the people there look like the people who are in control here. See, so you have to kind of look at it, and that's why I love history, because it kind of tells you why you are seeing what you're seeing today. Because people are trying to maintain. They're trying to maintain what was happening back there, and that's all about power. People in power does not relinquish ground without a struggle. Period.
And we all know. See, this is why they want to shut down history, right? Why the knowledge that you bring to this conversation, right? They don't want people to know. This is why they want us to be relegated to, let's just have this symbolic stuff during February, Black History Month, right? And not have these conversations and not have this push every single day. Because the more you know about how bad this country has been and that we're heading in that direction, they're just trying to, like I said, when you put lipstick on a pig, it's still a pig, right?
Yeah, you're right.
And so what I'm seeing today, I feel like I'm living back in the 60s and even further back. It's just the 21st century version of it.
Well, yeah, you're right, but I think it's going to go farther. I think it's going to get deeper. Now it's about limiting CRT and also limiting Black history education in schools. But tomorrow it's going to be about limiting the access to this data over the internet. It's going to be about destroying what Google can actually display when you type in certain things about CRT. It's like a process, a step-by-step process.
And to that point, because they said that analogy or that saying that they say, when they came for this segment, when they came for that one, no one did anything. When they came for this one, but when they came for me, there was no one left. And that's where we're heading, because you're right. Right now, he's saying, you can learn about European history and anything that puts this country in a favorable light. You can't learn about the truth of slavery, right? That's critical race theory. That's the truth of this country.
Exactly. I mean,
in its sins.
In essence, when you look at when you start from the beginning of the country, when the Pilgrims came into Virginia, set up their camp, and then when the Puritans came over, who was going to Virginia, ended up going off course, ended up in Plymouth, so on and so forth. It is what it is. All right, and I may have that twisted but that's not my point. But my point here is this right here. The reason for coming here was for minerals. It was for precious minerals, because they had already did Africa. You know what I mean? And European societies were starving. They lived in a king versus subject society. All right, that's what the deal was. And so when the Europeans, who are the subjects, came over here, they mimicked that structure. The subject and the king being the government, the king being the individuals who are like them, male and white. And so if you were not the king, you were the subject, people that look like us. So the king had rights. The Constitution was written for the king, members of the king family, who were Europeans, as opposed to the subject, who were people that look like us.
And to that point, like the whole thing with Christopher Columbus, right? Where
that's
folks
a joke.
Right, that's what I'm saying, right? Where Columbus, how can you discover something that was already there? Yeah. There were people already here, and you displaced them, right? And so now you want to take credit for that he was the one that discovered America. When you, like I said, if you go back and learn the real history, that's not the case.
Black people were here long before he arrived.
Right.
Long before he arrived.
Right.
But they focus on one particular event because it makes them look like,
this belongs to them.
I mean, if you think about it, Jesus was black. So was think about it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Look at the way he was born.
Right.
The Catholics know it. Look, go into the Pope's chamber and see who he prays to. It doesn't look like a European. So that's the often meant sense of of supremacy. If I want you to see me as superior, I got to have the individuals that you're worshiping think that you feel consider sincere looks like me. So they got to look like me.
How do we change the mindset in this country when there is an indoctrination going on to try to keep people from learning the real history of America in its sins, and one of its biggest sins was slavery, right? And folks want to mask that saying you should just get over it, right? The Jewish folks will never get over Hitler. They will never get over the Nazis.
And nor should they.
Exactly, because they know that if, like they said, those who aren't familiar with history are doomed to repeat it, right?
Exactly.
I think that's the course that black people are on in this country, because a lot of us are not paying attention and we don't know the history of this, and they think this is something new, and it is not. This behavior, these Marjorie Taylor Greens and all these folks, this is not new. This Donald Trump, this is not new.
It's not at all.
It's just packaged in a different package for the 21st century approach, right? And my fear is, like you said, it's not just them. There are tens of millions of people who agree with that mindset, right? And that's all. They want to increase the population, as you said, right? Not people deciding whether or not they want it. We'll tell you, because we need to increase our numbers, and hopefully we can indoctrinate that segment as they grow up, right? Because we don't want them in schools early on learning the history of this country, because it might have people make a decision and saying, wow, we need to do better, right?
I mean, the other thing you can look at how they treat it, and I'm not really against anyone who's trying to who tried to escape a war zone. I mean, that's a heinous, ugly situation.
Been a war zone in Africa, in certain parts of Africa forever,
That's
right?
my point. you making my point. But you look at how they treat the people coming over from Ukraine versus people coming over from Haiti,
Or the money being poured in.
Exactly. So you see again where there's a preference towards those individuals that look like the ruling class, and in a country where we all paying into the coffer. The richest country in the world.
Yeah.
But there's a preference. And so, do I want to lose that status of being a member of the ruling class?
Yeah.
If I lose that status, then my life is going to be, they're going to do to me what I did to them. So the idea here is that put it through my structure, through a law, through education, and all those other institutions that were built based on the racism that this country was built on, I can actually implement such policies that I can maintain my status.
So again,
that is the issue.
My question to you again, Dr. Bradley, and to our audience is, how do we get ourselves back on track? How do we come together? Because there's very few of us that recognize this. How do we get the message out? We try to do it here, but how do we reach the masses? We're telling folks it's coming, because we're on the tail end. We're like I use your golf analogy. We're on the back nine.
We're on the back nine.
Right, we're on the back nine.
Yeah, in fact, I'm going to the 19th hole.
Right, and a lot of these young folks, they're not even on the putting green.
No, they're not.
They're not even in the miniature golf.
Well, one of the things I would recommend that they do is be very selective and be. First of all, I would say understand. I should say, the power of your buying power. Is
there a book or something you could suggest that folks could pick up, read, or to kind of get their juices flowing?
Yeah, there's a book by I forgot the brother's name, but it's Dr. Anderson.
Okay.
It's White Labor and Black Slaves.
Okay.
I think that's the name of it. And what it does, it gives you a complete layout of the history of America. Also, I found the 1619 project.
I was going to say, would you recommend that?
I would recommend the
1619
project. Is very, very good, because it gives you a pretty good understanding of how Black America arrived here, how they were forced here, and what they were used for, and how they were conditioned. So one of the things, so I would say that you read. So we can't allow people to educate people. We have to educate ourselves.
Yeah.
So you got to read, all right, and understand what's going on. So don't just read the words.
Right.
Visualize what the words are saying to you, so you can understand and try to get into what was happening at the time these things were brought forward.
The sad part is, like I said, back in the day, it was almost illegal for black people to. It was illegal for black people to read. Now they're trying to make what you read illegal, right?
Yeah.
So they know they can't ban you from reading.
It's just turning it.
That's what I'm saying. It's the 21st century packaging of it. But I say to this. Find out what books they don't want you to read. Those are probably the ones that you want to get your hands on.
Yeah. Well, that's the first thing. And the second thing, I think it's important for Black America to understand the power of their buying power. And I think Dr. King and what happened in Birmingham is a very good example of how powerful Black American buying power is. They almost ran that bus company out of business,
Right.
man.
But you know what I was saying too, Dr. Bradley? The Democratic Party, if they were smart, right? You tell me if this is a crazy idea. Because my wife wants to buy a home in Florida, and I'm just with all this craziness. I like the warm climate. It's not the folk down. It's the climate. All the money they spend on these campaigns, right? Why not say to folks, we will pay for you a house in Florida, and get about 100,000 people, black folks in Florida, right?
So you want to migrate? you want
change the landscape.
You want to
right?
change the landscape like Georgia,
right? You think
Georgia,
about it, because that's really what happened with Georgia. A lot of folks, I know a lot of people from here moved down there, and that's why Georgia's because the money that they spend campaigning could offset that by having folks in places like Massachusetts, where you have more than enough folks here that a Republican cannot get elected to. I would explore that to move that many folks to Florida. You change the dynamics down.
Well, they're definitely doing it in terms of gerrymandering. They're kind of carving up the districts so they can have their people vote for them.
But the type of money they spend, I mean, just think of the presidential race alone, over $2 billion.
Yeah,
that buy a lot of homes.
That's interesting.
That buy a lot of homes, because
White Wealth and Black Labor. That's what it is. White Wealth and Black Labor.
That's the name of the book?
Yeah, the name of the book by Dr. Anderson.
Okay.
Claude Anderson, I believe his name is.
All right. Okay.
Okay, what we got?
All right. Well, that's going to
so it's already
wrap up.
It's already that time.
It's already that time. Other than outside, it's heating up in here with the conversation.
Yeah.
You've been listening to At the Round Table with MAMLEO. We're going to take our break, and we'll be right back.
Get some warm tea, man.
Yeah.